Clean and Sober. A reminder, you will find the program right here at WWDB AM 860. Every Friday from 10 until 11 o'clock until we run out of money.
And we're not going to.
Well, knock wood. This is a commercial enterprise. By the way, can we solicit money here on the air? Can we tell people, send $1? No. All right. Anyway.
Where would they send it?
To me.
You're going to give your address out?
Well, no, we'll work the details. Anyway, Clean and Sober every Friday, 10 until 11 o'clock, talking about the disease of addiction. We're really, it's great, Mr. Honigan, am I pronouncing his name right?
Honigman, yes.
Honigman. Great job. He's at least the second young fellow who we've had on the program who went through a successful recovery situation and then decided to turn around and devote his life to this, to this field. It's inspiring. It's inspiring.
I find it fascinating because, you only think about the drug problem, the drug addiction in this country. And when I asked him the question about, dirty doctors or what kind of drugs, it's the same as it is in the United States.
Sure it is. Sure it is. It's a small world, as they say. But I wouldn't want to paint it. But incidentally, he mentioned in passing, Yehuda did, that a colleague of his, Brian Sylvie.
Brian Sylvie, yes.
Sylvie is associated with Jerusalem Sober House, and Brian has been very patient.
Very.
Been on the phone here now for 20 minutes waiting to get on the air, and we're sorry for the delay, but Brian, welcome to Clean and Sober.
All right, thank you, Steve. Hi, Gary.
Hey, Brian, how are you? I'm glad there's no more long-distance phone calls, or you'd be
broke by now.
Broke.
So,
to Steve's point very early in the show, a guy doesn't wait 40 minutes to say nothing about, conjecture about the stock market or the sports team. So,
we know people are motivated to hang on the line here because they actually have something to share with us. Brian, how'd you get involved in the recovery arena, and B, Jerusalem Sober House?
Okay, well, it also gets back to one of the questions you asked Yehuda earlier, and that's what's the tie between religion and 12-step programs and treatments. I'm coming at respectfully disagreeing with Yehuda that there is a strong tie between religion and substance abuse and recovery. So I ended up in Jerusalem meeting some of the guys that founded Jerusalem.
Hey, Brian, can I interrupt you for a second? Are you on a speaker phone, or are you speaking right into the headpiece?
I am actually on a speakerphone. I now switched back.
Much better.
I can't tell you how great you sound. Okay, so again, this is interesting. So you depart a little bit from your colleague there. Tell us what you believe to be the connection between spirituality or religion and recovery.
All right. Well, I met one of the founders of Jerusalem Sober House in Jerusalem at a yeshiva, which is a religious school. He and I struck up a great relationship, and I was there because I was getting away from the environment that I was, in trouble with, in drugs, alcohol, and whatnot, which was a fraternity lifestyle in college. And really through a series of events that I cannot explain otherwise except from a higher power, I say, okay, so this is the track that I'm on. So I met this guy, and he introduced himself very warmly that, this is who he is. He's an addict. He lives by his words and says, I'm in recovery. And, wound up becoming one of the co-founders, as I said. So, again, just through the events in my life, I saw these things coming up, popping up, patterns showing up. And then I read a book, which I'd like to mention if it's okay. It's called God of Our Understanding by Rabbi Shais Taub. And I did not read it when it first came out. I read it about a year and a half later, but it's a remarkable book. And it really confirmed the things that I was seeing, the ties between religion and recovery. So the basic premise, the first half of the book, is that the disease of addiction is treatable with spirituality. And I'm going to separate two things. I'm going to separate four things. I'm going to separate religion and spirituality. And then I'm going to separate addiction and substance abuse. But both those things have relationships to each other. And what he makes, the point in the book he makes, is that the addict's drug of choice is not, as we would initially think, his problem. It's really a solution. Because for the addict, his or her drug of choice is not a problem, it's a solution. If it were the problem, they'd eventually give it up. but because it's their solution, it's their only solution because it's their substitute for spirituality that they lack.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. You and I should sit down and we should have you back and we should talk about this at length because, like I say every week, this disease mercifully has not touched me or my family. So I look at this thing from a kind of distance, and I'm fascinated by this notion of the relationship between spirituality and recovery, and also fascinated by this dance that goes on in the recovery movement, particularly in AA, where they are at great pains to dance around this issue
stop right there.
of God and all of that. I'm fascinated by it.
Wait, stop right there. Let's go back to the establishment of AA.
Mm-hmm.
Bill W.
Yes.
Right. He went and he saw Carl Jung, okay, and he was treated by Carl Jung for probably a year, and he was in recovery. He was on the road. He was walking back to the boat or the plane, whatever was going to take him back to America, and he fell off the wagon.
And Jung said to him, "I can't help you."
Well, he said, "I can't help you."
That's right.
He said, "I can't help you. It's beyond me, but the higher power can help you." And then from that, we know what happened. I think most of us know what happened from there. And he's quoting. By the way, I have this book in front of me, God of Our Understanding. He quotes in a letter to Bill W. years later the chapter and verse of Psalms that he based that final recommendation to Bill W. on.
Yeah, Brian, I hate to move this along because it's a rich and fascinating topic, but we're backed up a little bit here. Just let me ask you a couple of quick questions, and then we've got to move on.
Sure.
Are you, without regard to how intimately you think spirituality is hooked up to successful recovery, are you worried, or how do you answer people who go, the more you talk about spirituality, for some people, they're never going to get clean and sober if you keep talking about higher powers. How do you get around that argument?
I just say it may be true.
That's a great answer. If I could jump in, because I was going to ask you in another way, were you saying that if you were not a spiritual or a religious person that you could not get sober? Meaning, is there only one way to do this?
Is there recovery for atheists?
There is. That may be true.
I think it was a very, very honest answer.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a clever answer. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that there's a lot. That sounded like the subtext of that. Pardon me if I'm wrong, Brian. But the subtext of that was good luck.
Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, I can only say what worked for me.
Right, exactly.
Brian, so you got involved with the Sober House, Jerusalem Sober House. You helped raise money for them? Is that we're led to believe?
To some degree. I mean, the biggest thing was that my buddy contacted me, and all the timing was perfect. I was coming out of business school with my MBA, and he says, listen, we're getting this Jerusalem Sober House together, and we have a great idea that I think is perfect for you. We need you to set up a 501c3 tax-deductible organization. And I said, yeah, I can do that. So 18 months later, we do have it, and those that want to make a donation, it is tax-exempt. And, to some degree, I contact people, maintain the relationships, try to find new avenues, and I really appreciate, Bob. Many shout-outs to Bob for connecting with Gary and Gary inviting me on. Things like this to try and raise awareness that we do have resources and help available both here and overseas.
Yes. Brian, where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm located in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Well, we got to get you in the studio here, and we'll do a whole show on spirituality in recovery. It's fascinating.
Okay.
Can we do that? Does Gary know how to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, but we're going to move on for now. Right.
That sounds great. We'll be in touch.
Brian, thanks so much for
joining
Brian.
us.
Thank you, well, it's a pleasure.
Have a nice weekend.
Brian, Sylvie, great stuff. Two guys, both on the same successful thus far path of recovery. One of whom, again, stresses the non-religious aspect of what they do at the Sober House in Jerusalem, or qualifies it. And another who just said he thinks religion's got a central role to play, or spirituality has a central role to play in recovery.
And it does for many people.
Listen, the one thing I've learned about this thing is whatever works, works.
Right.
It would be foolish to sit on the sidelines and criticize what works. If it works, it works. There's no argument there. But there is, again, as I said, it's fascinating to watch the particularly in Alcoholics Anonymous, they do this dance, which I think is, I understand it, but it is a dance where they are just great pains to make sure they don't say God. And they're talking about a situation that's not unlike a religious experience. Why deny that?
But Steve, I do hear God used a lot in meetings.
Well, you know what I mean. Officially, the meetings are unique to each meeting is unique. But the official position of AA is no. In fact, at the beginning of it, when they actually talked about God, they began changing it because they realized it was shutting people down.
Well, in the preamble and everything, they say God as you understand Him. So it can be your higher power can absolutely be anything you want it to be.
Anyway, great. So we'll have Brian back and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Clean and sober. Let's do this thing and then we'll come back and clean up, I guess. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're listening to Clean and Sober on WWDB AM 860 every single Friday morning at 10 o'clock. I'm Gary Hendler, my co-host Steve Martorano, and today was International Day here.
That's right. We did span the globe. The wide world of
drug addiction
and recovery.
And recovery, more importantly.
How'd you find out? Gary has an extraordinary network of people, places, and things. And so you ran into these guys through your meetings?
Through networking of different people I know. Yeah. A good friend of mine, Bobby, turned me on to them. Mm-hmm. Bobby's a musician. I've known him for 30, 40 years, and it's a whole network.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that obviously doesn't surprise me that there would be a significant drug and alcohol problem anywhere in the world. Doesn't surprise me that people are starting up small clinics and recovery facilities in places like Jerusalem. By the way, I can think of a lot of places where drinking makes, I'd be drinking too if they were firing rockets at me every 30 seconds, I guess.
Right.
So I understand all that. Whenever we talk about the worldwide nature of this, I'm reminded of the guest we had, and I forget his name, forgive me, but he was a crewmate on the ship that was seized by the Somalia.
John C.
John C. was with us, right? And he said, look, he's been all over the world. He can find a meeting anywhere.
Right.
Find a meeting anywhere. And so can you. And you can find help anywhere. Gary Hendler, Steve Martorano, Clean and Sober every Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks, Tim Halloran, for producing. We'll see you next week.